just like every terminology and every concept, the term supplier relationship management, of course, would have different definitions because people would define it from different perspectives, right? But then I've decided to pick the definition of CIPS just for the purpose of this lecture, which defines supplier relationship management as the relationship that is formed between a buyer and a supplier. And that relationship is subject to criticality of goods and services that is being purchased or supplied into the organization. What this means is that the organization will decide to choose the type of suppliers that they want to develop relationship with. This also suggests that you don't need to develop relationship with all the suppliers in the organization. That might not be efficient, especially when you have a pool of organizations that you want to deal with as suppliers. So take, for instance, if you walk into maybe Asda, Tesco's, or Computer Warehouse, or any of the retail outlets, and you see various products on their tills that are provided or supplied by different suppliers. Now, it might be challenging for that organization to develop relationship with all those thousands of suppliers. That is not efficient. That involves some administrative cost. And then in order to address that, it makes a lot of sense for you to choose which supplier you want to develop relationship with. So supplier relationship management also determines the type of working relationship that the procurement manager should look to form with their suppliers. So in addition to choosing who you want to develop your relationship with, it is important to also decide and establish what type of relationship do I want to form with this type of suppliers. Depending on the risk and the importance that the suppliers poses to your organization, the type of relationship also differs. There are some suppliers that you need to have long-term partnership with because they are critical to your organization. There are some suppliers that you probably need to subject to competition because you have the buying power and there is a lot of competition in the market. There are some suppliers that you might need to approach with more volumes. In other words, you need to consolidate your demand so that you can have economy of scales and also have the power to negotiate better deals with those suppliers. So in addition to, establishing which suppliers you want to develop a relationship with, it is important to know the type of relationship you are developing with each supplier. Essentially, supplier relationship management is a very important and vital skills for procurement experts. Why? Because when you have suppliers in your organization, if you don't manage the relationship, it can expose your organization to risk. It can affect the inflow of materials that you use for your production. It could also expose you to some legal risk that would cost your organization money. Essentially, the relationship, the quality of your relationship with your suppliers also determine the quality of the relationship you have with other partners outside your organization. So these suggest that supplier relationship management is very vital. Now let's move into the different ways by which we can manage relationship with suppliers. In what ways can we do that? There are various ways. Then I'm presenting 4 ways to you. There are more than 4, but then let's look at these 4 ways. The first is supplier relationship management could enable you to assess a supplier capability to meet contract needs. So basically, organization would want to know which supplier would meet their specification requirement. For instance, you've been invited by the Department of ICT, all right, to help them purchase laptops with associated softwares. These laptops and softwares have some specific functionalities that the supplier should meet because the software must work perfectly on the laptops. Now, it doesn't mean that the supplier of the laptops should also be the supplier of the software. Of course, we know the laptops hardware are supplied by Dell, Hitachi, HP, Panasonic, and all the rest. But softwares could be maybe a Microsoft package, which is developed by Microsoft. So you need to assess the capability of your supplier to ensure that there is interoperability between that software and the hardware. And also to know that that supplier perhaps have maybe previous experiences in supplying the product that you want to buy. The second way also is to manage the supplier performance. So once you've established that this list of suppliers can meet your needs, then you need to manage the performance. Suppliers usually tell you what they can do. And because they need a contract, they tell you that they can do almost everything. In fact, in some cases, they give examples of where they have implemented projects, which again might be convincing for you, but you still need to manage the performance when you've awarded a contract to them. Then the other way by which you can manage relationship with suppliers is to work with supplier in accord, in a kind of collaborative approach to identify challenges with the supplier of that product. No contract is perfect. No supplier is perfect. There are external factors, government policies, politics, potential customer demand, taste in customers that are changing. These external factors can change the nature of service provision. So irrespective of what you have in your contract, when you are implementing that contract, there are other factors that could change. Therefore, you need to measure the performance of suppliers. Noah, can you please can you mute? So therefore, in addition to measuring the performance of your supplier, you also need to identify the challenges with the supplier. But rather than doing this alone, you need to engage with the supplier, because the supplier is the manufacturer in some cases of the products that you are using. So they might provide insight into opportunities to improve the performance of this product that you are using. Or maybe the end users, which are stakeholders within your organization, are facing some challenges in deriving the expected outcome, expected benefit from the product they have purchased. So you might need to get in touch with a supplier to have some discussion and understand how do we improve this process. You can't do that if you don't have a very good relationship with a supplier. The third option is also, or the fourth way, is also to ensure that the right levels of contract terms are in place for keeping relationship on track for both parties. What does this mean? It means that from the contracts that you've developed, there should be roles and responsibilities both for the suppliers and both for the procuring organization. There should be periodic timetable for you to meet, to review the performance of suppliers and also to revisit issues that need to be addressed. There should also be key milestones that both of you would come together to agree on, so that you can know that each party is delivering their expected responsibility. So for you to keep on track with the relationship, to ensure that it flows smoothly, the contract terms must have the right level of information. This is not exhaustive examples of how to use relationship with suppliers. These are just some of the options. So I will encourage you to read some of the materials that I've uploaded on Canvas to enable you expand your view on ways to manage suppliers. And then there's this supplier relationship model that I like it. It's very beautiful. It was proposed by Jarvis Grove, very recently. And this model, to be honest, it breaks down supplier relationship into different elements. So you can see it has in the inner circle, you have the supplier relationship management itself, and then you now have the outer layer of the inner circle with some 4 major aspects. Now let's look at these aspects. These aspects, according to the model, is very important to establish relationship with suppliers. The first aspect is effective communication. Communication that is 2 ways. In other words, you send information, you receive information, they send information to you, you interact with them, you ask questions, you tell them what they don't understand. You have free flow of information between the buying and the supplier organization. Without communication, relationship will be very weak. And this is not limited to supplier and buyer relationship. Even in individual relationship between spouses, relationship between friends, communication is very, very essential. The other main aspect also is ethical conduct. There should be openness, there should be transparency, there shouldn't be any hidden agenda with your suppliers. You need to have an open book so that you can, expose whatever potential challenges proactively as early as possible, and also try as much as possible to identify potential conflicts. There should be accountability. People must be responsible for what they said they are going to do. So in other words, once you have established a contract with your suppliers, and in that contract, there has been an agreement that you'll be meeting every 4 months, right? It means that you must also meet that obligation. You must ensure that every 4 months you are ready for meetings. Then we have governance. Governance is very important because when there is no governance structure, people will perform in an arbitrary manner. People do whatever they like. So you need to put rules and regulations in place to guide this relationship. So that's about the aspects. Now, if you look at the outer layer to the aspect, you have 6 different areas that is essential for enhancing the already established relationship. So once you have a relationship that is already established with the suppliers, right? How do you now promote this relationship? According to this model, technology is very important. Why? Because with technology, you can reduce the administrative costs and the challenges or the barriers of effective communication. All right. So with technology, you send emails, you could have a shared folder, or you could have a Google Drive shared document where each party can, upload contract terms, upload the meetings, the last meetings, also upload essential information that would help the relationship. Then there is innovation. Why is innovation important? Because we live in a dynamic environment. We live in a changing world. And as organization, your customers are requesting for changes in your product. If you don't have a supplier that would also respond to that change, it will be difficult for you to source for materials that would help you to produce innovative product. So as you are innovating, you need to carry your supplier along. You don't request for new products that comes to the supplier as a shock. There should have been a plan, an anticipation, an initial conversation on your plan to innovate. And then the supplier can put their house in order and put processes in place to ensure that they help you with that innovation. Then risk management. Just like every relationship, there are risks to be shared. And that risk, or in this case, should be shared between the suppliers and also the buying organization. In a transactional form of relationship,